Hey guys, this is my first question and answer video. I don't claim to be the best black belt in the world, but I've been training and teaching jiu-jitsu for over 14 years. I've been a black belt for like 5 years. I got 3 medals from the world championships at the lower belts, and I've had the opportunity and the privilege to train with some of the best jiu-jitsu players in the world. So let's just get right into the questions. First one, what do you do when you're caught in the spiderweb position? It feels like I'm just stalling until I get tapped. Sometimes I catch his bottom leg between mine, but I still struggle to advance. So I would say your line of thinking is definitely correct. Even though it may feel like you're stalling, you got to know when you're in a submission or a bad position, you're kind of on your opponent's time. You can't just escape whenever you want. You kind of have to wait for your moment. Catching his bottom leg in between yours is a good route to an escape. You should really look up go to YouTube and put in Keenan arm lock defense, and the defense where he grabs the inside of his thigh and escapes the arm lock that way. Just go watch that video and practice that escape. That's really my preferred arm lock escape. I really don't even try to do any others, and I have a lot of success with that. And I know a lot of the students really like that one too. So look that one up, Keenan arm lock defense. Next question, how do you motivate yourself to keep fighting in competition when you feel like you're losing? So I got a couple different thoughts on this one. First one, I would say what's unique about jiu-jitsu is that you always have the opportunity to win the match by submission. It's not like other sports like football, basketball, hockey. It's not like the first goal or score wins, right? So even if you're down 8 points, 10 points, 20 points, you could still say get like an ankle lock or a heel hook if it was legal, arm lock. You could get any type of submission and end the match and win, no matter how bad you were getting your butt kicked previously. So that's one way to look at it. Another thing I would say is I think people put so much pressure on themselves with competition. They think to beat this certain person, they have to be so much better than them that they should have been better than them like the whole time they were doing jiu-jitsu or something. Like, you really just have to be better than this person for potentially 5 minutes if that's how long the match is, right? That's not a crazy amount of time to go in and trust in your jiu-jitsu and not make mistakes. And I would say I've seen a lot of matches where guys have come back and won, or just even won via the rule set. There's a lot of guys who have lost just due to the rules, right? I've seen so many matches just win like a 2-0 score with just like almost kind of like a nothing sweep. You just kind of knock the person over from half guard, and that ends up being the final score, the winning move, right? It can just be as simple as that. A lot of people think of having a victory as like a dramatic comeback submission. It can happen like that, but a lot of times it doesn't happen like that. It's just more basic jiu-jitsu that's going to win it for you. Finally, on this, I would say my favorite thing that I kind of heard from a friend of mine about this was you want to try to think of yourself almost as a superhero. Think of your favorite superhero, Batman, whatever. No matter what happens to him in the movie or in the story, you always know that he's going to come out on top and beat the bad guy at the end, right? So you almost want to try to give yourself that type of confidence that even if your opponent gets on your back or takes you down in the first 30 seconds of the match, you know you're going to get out, you're going to escape, you're going to get your half guard, you're going to get on the person's back, you're going to get into a good position, you're going to end up winning the match. Even if you gotta lie to yourself. I mean, 5 minutes isn't that long to lie to yourself, is it? You really gotta try to pump yourself up. If you don't have anybody around you, you just gotta try to be your own cheerleader in your head and just try to tell yourself that no matter what, you're gonna come out on top and you're gonna get to the moves that you're confident in, hit them, and then you're gonna end up the winner. Next question. How do you achieve good posture and why is it important? Good question. I would say above all else, good posture is going to be the most important because it's going to save you energy. Efficiency is so important in jiu-jitsu. I can't tell you how important it is. But just think about it in terms of walking, okay? You walk upright with your shoulders back. You can walk for an hour, hours if you had to, right? Just think about if you were completely bent over, how long could you walk for without having to stop and take a break? Probably not very long at all, right? That's one form of posture. In jiu-jitsu, you don't necessarily think of the standing position. You don't necessarily want to be standing just necessarily straight upright. So good posture in standing is more of a wrestling stance when you're leaned forward. But you wouldn't be able to stay in that stance for an hour at a time. So good posture when you're wrestling looks different than good posture when you're walking. So good posture is going to look different everywhere. So it kind of depends on where you are. I can give you a few more examples. Good posture when you're in closed guard is a very important one. You'd want to be sitting back, head up. A lot of times I don't even look at my opponent. I'll just sit back, shoulders back, and try to create a lot of space, stretching my body away from them, trying to think about keeping your spine straight. Good posture in half guard, top half guard, you'd almost kind of look like you're wrestling. You'd have your shoulders in front of your hips. You'd be wanting using your arm for an underhook, your other arm for a cross face. You wouldn't want to be too upright because it'd allow your opponent to wrestle up into you easily or give opportunities to go for your back. But just try to think about it in terms of efficiency. You want to be able to try to hold a position for as long as possible and not use too much muscle for strength, because if you use muscle, you're going to get really tired really quick. Next question. Can you provide some tips on managing your gas tank? When should you explode? When should you chill? And try to improve your position more conservatively. I have a couple different thoughts on this. First, I would say you have to develop positions that you're very, very efficient in that you could use for a long time, minutes and minutes if you had to be in them. Say on top, if I'm in top half guard, that's a position where I can really start to gear down and I'm not going to use a lot of energy at all. So I can really start to recover, build some energy back up, because it's going to be tough for my opponent to recover if I'm able to be top half guard, chest to chest with an underhook and a deep crossface, and I can really start to wear him down. If I'm on the bottom, it's kind of a little bit different because you have to develop a guard that you're comfortable enough in where you can tie your opponent up and just keep him busy enough that you're not just constantly using energy. It's different for some people. Some people like deep half guard, other people like De La Hiva, collar sleeve, but you just don't want to be constantly moving, constantly scrambling. You want to make it more of a chess match where you're able to outmaneuver him. You really want to be exploding as little as possible, always trying to just more kind of outthink him, right? Another thought that I had on this, and I had this experience from training for a no time limit tournament before. I've actually competed in a couple, but think about it yourself. What moves would you use and what moves would you not use if it was a no time limit match when you were rolling? Just pretend. I know myself, I would not want to be spending a lot of time wrestling. Think about what do you find exhausting in a grappling match? For me, it's when you're wrestling and you're not able to take the guy down and you get taken down, or when you go for a submission and it fails or it doesn't work. It can be totally deflating and it can take up so much of your energy. So you don't necessarily just want to be spamming submissions and spamming sweep attempts that just end up in like kind of failed single legs or like end up with you in front headlock. Those are positions you want to avoid too. Anything where he's able to drain a lot of your energy. You don't want to spend time in front headlocks. You don't want to spend time with your shoulders pinned down to the floor. Those are positions where he's just going to be able to take too much advantage, and that can suck up a lot of your cardio too. But I think for myself, I try to spend most of the match in like second gear. Not too slow. I don't want to try to be too like stalling, but I should be able to pick up the pace in the match if I have to. So I don't want to be going at a pace where I feel like it's too much for me and I have to like gear down. I want to be able to like gear up and then gear down if I have to. So yeah, efficiency in moves and in movement. Obviously it takes experience too, but I know if I get on the back, I can be there all day. If I get the Kimura, say, I can hold that for a long time. I'm not going to get exhausted. If I get mount, I can hold that all day. One final thought on the cardio. It's a little bit of a weird one because not everyone is going to want to be working their cardio at all times, right? You're going to go through periods where maybe you want to push your cardio and you don't want to push your cardio as much. Everyone may do that, right? So I'd say you can almost kind of play a little game with yourself. Look at the clock and say you're going to try to push really hard for this minute. Or say no matter what the guy does, you're not going to get out of first or second gear, and if you have to, you're just going to play defense and you're just going to kind of shut things down and fight the urge to go hard. I heard John Will, I think, describing it as like the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. For a minute, go crazy. Then for the next minute, you're only defense. You're just trying to conserve energy and just do whatever you need to do, right? So you could try to think of it like that, make it into a game. Or if you just really want long rounds, just roll with your partner, get someone after and ask them if they want to roll right after, and then it's a real test if you roll 2 back-to-back 6-minute rounds through the break, or we often do 6-minute rounds. Maybe the class that you're doing is 5 or whatever, but challenge yourself sometimes. You don't have to do it every single class, but say once a week you're going to do 2 rounds back to back, and you don't care how tired you are, you don't care how much defense you have to play. But I think it's really worth it, especially mentally, to get that edge, that knowing that you can fight while you're tired, and even though you're exhausted, still in your head you should be like, no problem, I'm still going to be able to defend, I can fight off the submission, I'm going to be able to recover, I can get through this, right? Next question. How do you prepare for competition intensity? For one, do it more often. Of course, if you only compete twice a year, yeah, you're going to shit your pants every time you have to compete because you don't do it very often. For me, I've definitely had, I don't know how many exactly, but I've definitely had well over 100 competition matches. And win or lose, that experience is invaluable, really. You just have to make it like, think of anything that you're good at. You probably do it more often than twice a year. Probably do it every day or multiple times a week, right? If you can get to that level of comfort with it, that's really the ultimate. I feel like a lot of people think that being nervous before a competition is bad, but really being nervous just means that you care about the result. But you kind of have to just come to terms with the fact, like, okay, you're nervous. You're not going to forget how to do jiu-jitsu. For me, honestly, like when I was young competing, I think I just didn't even understand like what anxiety really was. Like I just didn't even think that I got nervous. Like I definitely felt like the energy that everyone feels, like the anxiety, but I always just channeled that into like positive energy. Like, okay, I just felt like pumped up. People are going to get to see me go at it. It's probably going to be something cool is probably going to happen. So you always just got to try to use that energy to pump yourself up for it, rather than using that for negative thoughts, like, oh crap, like I'm probably gonna mess up, I'm probably gonna lose, this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen. Even if you gotta tell yourself some lies, just say like, this is gonna be cool, I'm excited for this, people are gonna get to watch me do my thing. You gotta try to use it positively. So don't waste a lot of time trying to get rid of the feeling of nerves. Try to use that to your advantage. Use that to build yourself up, give yourself some energy, and it's just a good opportunity to learn about yourself, right? The more that you just get over the fact that you're nervous, the more that you're going to be able to breathe, focus on what you're doing, and really lower your heart rate, start to relax, and then that's when you're going to start to slow the game down and things will start working a lot better for you. Final thought on this one too, I find a good intense warm-up can often help too. If I go to a competition and I'm just stepping right on the mat without getting any type of like exercise or sweat going on, for me, I know I'm not going to be very productive that way. I know I have to get some energy out. I like to get my heart rate up, almost feel like I've already had a match before I have a match. Don't worry about your cardio when at this point when you're going to compete. I'm talking about like an organized competition, not just an in-house thing. But actually, even for the COVID Classic, I found one thing that people did poorly was not warm up enough. Too many people just kind of showed up, did their match at the start of class, and then just kind of went out there and did their thing. I found that some people that showed up did an intense warm-up like I would do. Get your heart rate up, kind of blow your lungs out. You're not going to destroy your cardio from just doing that for 5 minutes, right? I found those people had more success, and that's what I would always try to do before I compete if you have the opportunity. Next question. What percentage of your rolls do you find yourself rolling well? All of them. I find myself going through the motions, roll to roll, sometimes for a variety of reasons. Tired, not mentally present, lack of effort, etc. Okay, here's my advice on this. With jiu-jitsu, you need to be as specific as you possibly can be with the problems that you're having. Think about it in any other aspect of your life. Like say if your car didn't work and you called your mechanic and he was like, well, what's wrong with your car? And you're like, well, I don't know, it just doesn't work. Like it's not being very helpful, right? You have to be really specific with your problems. So say you tell me like, well, I keep getting my guard pass. Well, okay, how is he passing your guard? Is he grabbing your legs? Is he hugging your legs together? Is he stepping in with the knee cut pass? Is he immediately going to half guard and controlling your head? You really, really have to be specific with what are the problems that you're having, and then that's going to help you solve them a lot quicker. One of the worst things that can happen in jiu-jitsu, and I think it happens a lot more than people think, is just kind of just going in and rolling and just going through the motions. If you just kind of go in and just get your ass kicked, or just kind of, you just feel like you're not having that good of a match or that good of a day, it's just not helpful at all, because you really, really just have to know, what are you having problems with? Are you trying to get the guys back? Why can't you get the guys back? What problems is he presenting to you? Is he too strong? Is he keeping too much weight on top of you? He just gives you a frame with his hand that you can't get by. You just really, really have to be specific. Really kind of like demand more of yourself, like as a student. You want to go in beforehand with a position that you're really having a problem with, and just tell yourself you're going to try to figure it out, or you're just going to try to have a couple questions to ask me or ask whoever's teaching the class for after, something that you can kind of work with, because you always want to be building in jiu-jitsu and working off of kind of what you did last time, building your game, right? As a follow-up, any tips to deal with going through the motions while rolling? Or try to be specific as you can. Always have an idea of kind of like what you want to work on if you're just doing regular open sparring. And it really is a unique time in jiu-jitsu where there's so much information from all the best guys out there that literally, if you're having a problem with spider guard, you can literally find the best guys who play spider guard. They likely have a DVD trying to sell you on their moves, how to use it or how to pass it. So you can do something like that. Or if you're cheap like me, get one of your friends to steal it. There's probably someone in the gym that can get you the DVD. Or go on YouTube and look up the moves that you're trying to learn. Ask your friends send them the video. Ask them, is this a reliable guy that is teaching this move? Have you ever seen someone use it? Bounce it off a few with the higher belts, right? Use the resources around you. But it really is like the information age for jiu-jitsu. And I really think the potential of the people training right now is really limitless, because you can get as good as you want if you want to put the time in and watch the right stuff. Next question. With an infinite amount of moves in jiu-jitsu, how do you stay proficient in everything, if that's even possible? 1 week you practice one thing but may not come back to it a month later. One guy told me if he had a tournament coming up, he'd practice 3 moves for each position, 3 moves for side control, 3 for mount, etc. Couple different ways to look at this one. Okay, yes, you can't practice everything, of course, but there's going to be a lot of common positions that come up. Like, say you're watching this video right now, a lot of time spent rolling is either guard passing, playing guard, top half guard, bottom half guard, side control, mount, and back. I think we could probably agree those are the most common positions along with open guards, right? So a lot of your move selection is just going to kind of come down to your own game, and I think it really adapts to like your own personality, right? I use knee cut passes, cross faces, front headlocks. I use that stuff every single day when I'm rolling. I don't use flying scissor takedowns, cartwheel passes. I don't do things like that. I do like that idea of having 3 moves from each position, but say for a tournament, you want to just have, say, 3 maybe guard passes, 3 moves from the bottom, because if a guy defends one thing from a position, he defends another thing, it's good to have that something extra you can throw at him. So I do like that idea of working in 3s. But for me, it's spaced out key ideas over time. There's a book called Make It Stick. I heard it mentioned in a podcast before. But okay, say this week we did a lot of arm drags. Okay, I'm probably not going to repeat that for another month, but in that time you're not going to forget how to do the arm drag. You're just going to need to maybe sharpen it up a little bit by the time we do it again, and hopefully you kind of remember it and use it enough that by the time that we do that, you don't even need to sharpen it up. You're like, oh, I use this every day now. So you kind of slowly add moves to your repertoire as you gain experience. But just experiment. Try what we did in class, try what you saw, but don't be scared to throw moves in the garbage either. If something doesn't work, There's definitely moves that don't work for everyone or work better for people with certain body types. So you can't be scared to throw moves in the trash either. I always will watch instructionals, and I would say 20, 30, sometimes 40% of the moves, I think I wouldn't show this to a class because it's just too kind of specialized for someone's body type or someone's skill set. Next question. In a competition, when you don't know your opponent, what steps do you take to analyze his skill level, style, etc., so you minimize your risks? Is it something you can do? I'm going to assume you mean in terms of getting injured, which is definitely something you want to worry about for sure. This sport is all about longevity. But one thing I would say is you have to really more worry about yourself and the moves and the positions that you're going to look to use rather than what he's going to do. I always say, especially when you're starting out in jiu-jitsu, when you don't know what's happening in a roll or you're not sure what's going on, that's when you're at risk of getting injured or very likely getting submitted. So try to spend a lot of time in the positions that you're comfortable in, whether it's half guard, close guard, whatever. And then when you get into a competition, you want to try to have the mindset of, okay, as soon as this match starts, I know that I have a good half guard. So I'm going to try to pull guard. I'm going to try to get this guy into my half guard. And then from there, I'm going to know what's going on. I'm going to have a clear path of what to do. And then you're ahead of the game and you're managing things very well. You don't want to hesitate and say you're watching your opponent in the warm-up area and he's doing a bunch of takedowns and you're thinking like, oh boy, he's good at takedowns, I'm not good at takedowns. And then when you guys lock up, you're hesitating and you're not pulling guard and you're not doing what you normally would when you roll because you're too worried about what he's going to do. You can't worry too much about him. It is good if you have the opportunity to watch your opponent beforehand, maybe if it's a division where all the matches are happening back to back to back and you can kind of see your opponent or who you're going to face next. But I more just try to like to think if I know kind of one thing that they're good at or one thing to watch out for, that can be valuable. Like, oh, he's got a good triangle setup from close guard or whatever, watch out for it. But also it can work against you because sometimes it can hold you back because you may not go for a move that you were going to go for before because you think he's so good at this move, but maybe you already have a move that you do yourself to defend it, or you just have a natural instinct to defend it. So try not to get too concerned about what he's going to do. You want to try to think about what you're going to do and get in the positions that you know. Okay, thanks for that. Next question. What should I focus on at each belt level? So white belt, it's just about acquiring the basic moves, basic techniques, and just getting a general understanding of jiu-jitsu. Don't expect too much of yourself from white belt. Honestly, just keep showing up. A couple moves will stick, a couple moves will be over your head, but if you can just go through the motions and just gain all that valuable experience of the techniques along with the rolling, that's going to be worth its weight in gold down the road. At white belt, maybe you had to tap because someone was putting too much pressure on your head and your chest and your neck. Maybe you were trapped in mount, you didn't know what was going on, you had to tap to something that maybe wasn't actually really a submission. You might have spent some time on the bottom just wondering what the heck is going on. All these are valuable things because you're going to want to have answers to these questions as you go along your jiu-jitsu journey, but you really want to baby yourself at white belt. Be really, really kind to yourself, encourage yourself to keep going, and really just don't give up. It's definitely the most challenging belt if you ask me. Blue belt, you're starting to get a good understanding of the basic positions. You have an idea of what to do from back, from mount, from inside guard, maybe even a little bit from standing position. Also at blue belt, I would say you'll become a bit more interested in what would be, I would say, advanced positions, like things like X guard, deep half guard, deep lasso, things like this. But blue belt's also very challenging because you'll learn a couple of those moves. Say, okay, I'm learning deep half guard. I have one deep half guard move that for a little while I'm having success and I can seem to do it on everyone. But if you train with the same people a lot, they're going to figure you out. So your challenge will be, how am I going to get this move to work when everyone knows it and everyone knows step by step what I'm going to do? You're either going to have to create, a good distraction to set it up, or you just know that move so well and know every reaction that he's going to give to you that you can just still do it anyways. But that takes a lot of time, right? A lot of time and experience. You're going to end up throwing a lot of stuff at the wall and just kind of seeing what sticks, like I mentioned before. Don't be afraid to throw things away. And sometimes you might learn a technique that maybe you think it's not going to work that good, but when you try it, it surprises you. Or maybe you're really working something and you think it's going to work really well, but as you add it into your game, you just find that it just doesn't work, right? So you don't force things. You kind of have to go with the flow. Like they say, take what they give you. And for blue belt, it's just gonna be finding out what your strengths are, right? Purple belt, I would consider like the first advanced belt. Why do I consider it the first advanced belt? Because often for tournaments, they'll have divisions that are purple and up. And anytime you have an opportunity to fight a black belt, that's usually a pretty big deal to people. So I consider that an advanced level belt. Also, what's interesting about purple belt is if you go and watch from a couple of years ago, say the World Championships, the guys at purple belt who are likely now black belts, their overall games probably didn't change that much. What you know at purple belt, it's gonna carry over to black belt. Your favorite moves will likely still be your favorite moves. But I think once you get to purple belt, you're going to really start to assess yourself and look at what are the holes in your game, and you're going to want to start to fill those areas in. I'm sure you've all heard the joke that purple belts love to skip warm-ups. And really what I think it is that once you become a purple belt, you've trained long enough that you know that running in circles and doing that stuff isn't necessarily gonna help to your overall jiu-jitsu game. And in my opinion, purple belts that come to class, they're not coming to learn anything new. They're likely not going to see a lot of stuff that they already haven't seen before. But it becomes more about refining your game and building off of your A game. You're still going to want to keep adding to the moves that you love, but you need to just kind of flesh out the rest of your game, and you want to try to become well-rounded everywhere. Purple belt can kind of be a roller coaster of emotions, I would say, too. Because purple belt, you can have an aspect of your game, a submission or a sweep, where it's good enough that you can hit it on black belts. You can be that level when you're a purple belt, but you could also have not be able to shoot a double leg or not finish a single leg. You could still have big holes in your game. So that's what I mean. It can be a challenge. Still, don't give up on the moves that you know and love. Keep working on those, but you still have to try to kind of demand more of yourself and really assess yourself and look at what areas of the jiu-jitsu game do you really know very little about, and how are you going to develop those areas of your game. Brown belt's a cool one because once you get to brown belt, it's basically just a formality. You're going to get your black belt. Obviously, you love jiu-jitsu. You've dedicated a lot of your time and your life to it. And for me, brown belt, it was kind of less about learning new techniques and just kind of, again, more refining what I already know. Once you get to brown belt, you're going to know, all that really matters is basics. Basics is going to be what I use 80-90% of the time. Some of that other stuff can work, but the majority of your time you're going to spend using basic techniques, and you're going to start to look at all the things you learned previously and reassess how can you learn them better, how can you do it better. A good quote that I heard recently from John Will, he's an OG black belt, and he used the example of getting your black belt, which I can definitely relate to, but he said when you get your black belt, it's almost like it's time to go back to square one again. And I think you could use that example for any belt that you get. Okay, now it's time to go back to square one. Why? Because now you actually understand what I'm talking about. When you're a white belt and sometimes even a blue belt, things can just go over your head. It's just, jiu-jitsu's complicated, man. It's tough. But once you get your brown belt, your black belt, it's like you can relate it to kind of learning a language. Okay, now you know the basic words and kind of phrases, and now things that you kind of just kind of went along with, now they actually make sense. So it's time to go back and learn things from the start again. To me, that's why jiu-jitsu is so fun, because it's just infinite. It goes forever. You can always refine your techniques, learn new stuff, and improve on things and do better. Finally, of course, black belt. You'll find, and I hope I'm there for when all of my students get their black belt someday, but you'll find it becomes just less about you and more about how you're going to pay it forward and give something back to the jiu-jitsu community that gave so much to you. Are you going to teach? Are you going to make videos? I find now it's just kind of like how are you going to leave your mark as a black belt? Because for me, I don't necessarily care about being the best competitor in the world, but I would still like to be remembered at least in Nova Scotia for my contributions to jiu-jitsu. And I think I got a lot to give, and I think one of my skills is just kind of helping the overall group improve. I feel like I have a good filter on what techniques work and what techniques are bullshit. It reminds me of something Emily Kwok said when she was here for a seminar. It was something along the lines of not all black belts are going to be remembered, but not all black belts deserve to be remembered. Like, just because you win a lot of titles or you can submit everyone, it doesn't necessarily going to mean people are going to remember you in 10 or 15 years. It's going to be about the contribution that you made. How did you affect the people around you, right? Were you a good instructor? Were you a good guy? Did you help people out? Or did you just kind of care about yourself? I find those people are kind of forgotten about. Secondary part to this question was basically, how do I deal with bigger opponents? If you can get on top it's great because the size isn't going to matter as much if you're a smaller person on top of someone bigger. But if you think of it in the classic jiu-jitsu sense of, okay, maybe you start out from stand-up, I'm usually only about 160 or so pounds. So for me, if everything goes well and I'm going against a real big giant guy, I'm going to pull guard, get to a guard that I'm effective in, that I'm not going to be forced to carry a lot of his weight, say like a De La Hiva or a collar sleeve. Those are good positions, and I'm going to show those more coming up. But different guards, like say a half guard, you're technically just one small move away from carrying all the guy's weight and him getting chest to chest. So a lot of it's going to come down to like move selections and the guards that you're strong in, and just being able to deflect a lot of his weight and push him away. You always want to become a master of distance and not carrying your opponent's weight. A huge part of jiu-jitsu is the guard. It's really like the foundation of jiu-jitsu. It's always something you're going to be working on from white belt to black belt. So think about it in terms of like building frames. You want to have as many frames on your opponent as possible. The more frames you can have on him, the less of his weight you're going to feel and carry, right? So always be thinking about working on your guard, and look at a guard and think like, would I use that against a big guy? Can I use this on everybody? Or am I going to be forced to carry a big guy's weight if I go to this position? And I'm not saying don't use a guard if that's what you think, but don't use it against a big guy, right? Next question is, how do you identify what to work on? I'm assuming in my classes. A couple different ways. I would say my preferred one is just to watch the class. It's great because we film all the classes now, so I can really watch all the roles. But if I see a big gap somewheres, I just feel like I just have to fill it. So example I could use is, say, a year or so ago, I felt like in a lot of the classes I was teaching and watching, no one was really getting the cross shoulder post from half guard, and no one was understanding the knee shield and just how to maintain distance. It just seemed like everyone was just getting, as soon as they were bottom half guard, they were just immediately getting crushed. So I saw that, and I was like, okay, we really need to spend some time just on basic half guard positioning, how I can keep the guy away, collect my thoughts, what am I going to do, go to the underhook, get up into the coyote half guard. So I just started repeating that as a drill until I saw everyone kind of had that basically down and could keep distance in the half guard, because that's a super, super important skill. That's probably my favorite way, especially if I can use my own knowledge and skill to just make up some drills that I already know. Another way would be is if people just kind of tell me in the class that they're having issues with, say, like a over-under pass or like a leg drag pass or something like that, then I'll try to kind of maybe gear what we're doing next and include a little bit of that particular move or defense. I've also watched a lot of the instructionals from Gordon Ryan and Craig Jones and John Danaher, and I've put together pretty good notes. So I feel like I can always refer back to stuff. So even if I don't have the answer to somebody's problem, I can like look it up, and I feel like all that stuff just gives me a good curriculum to build off. And I feel like jiu-jitsu is just so infinite that I can connect things together pretty easily. Like, say, right now we were working sweeps from when the guy was on his knees. Then we were doing sweeps from when the guy's standing. Then we'll go possibly into like back control. Then we'll do front headlock. Then we'll do turtle. Like, you want to try to make sure things make sense so guys can add them to their game. Finally, how do you identify what to work on? Tournaments. Tournaments are always going to drive the training, right? Whatever works in tournament, whatever Gordon Ryan's doing and submitting everybody with, people are just going to just do that, right? They're not going to do stuff that's more obscure and that looks kind of cool on Instagram, but no one actually does, right? Good instructors are just going to base their classes off a competition. These world-class guys, they've already cut out all the fat. They know what works and what doesn't. So, like I said, it's the information age for jiu-jitsu. So there's just so much to study and a lot of fluff out there too. So you have to know what the fluff is and just study what works and trust these guys that have actually gone out there and done it and won it. I think a good 3-question filter criteria when you're thinking about if you want to show a move or technique. Think about, have you ever seen it done at a high level in competition? Has it ever worked at Black Belt Worlds? I've seen a lot of matches at Black Belt Worlds. Has this technique ever happened? Would I be able to replicate it fairly easily? And how easy would it be to teach? Some moves you see and you just know it's just not going to be easy to teach, and other ones make a lot more sense and people will just pick up a lot easier. So I think that's a good way to look at it too. Second part of this question, when you've identified what to work on, what's your process for improving that skill? Spend a lot of time in whatever area that is. Say it's half guard. Okay, we need to work on our half guard. All the moves that we're going to do are going to be from half guard for the next week or two. And this is not something I've always known. I've obviously kind of developed this with experience, but I feel like especially the last year or so, this is something I've really done a lot, and I've seen a big improvement in my classes and just the overall level of the students. You want to just kind of spend more time in that area. I recently spent a couple weeks just on omoplata setups, defense, counters, and then people really pick it up. They really learn it. They start to use it. If you just randomly use techniques, okay, today we're doing a single leg, tomorrow we're doing a scissor sweep, next day we're doing a mount escape, it's just tough, like as a student, to connect those things together. If you can connect things together and make them flow nicely, it's just going to make things make more sense. So my process is pretty much this. Okay, I know what I want to work on. I want to work on half guard. I want to work on arm lock defense. I want to work on back control. And then I just do like a big, deep information dive. I'll look at a couple people, 2 or 3 people that I respect and think are really good in that area. I'll study what they have online, or maybe look at an instructional of theirs, and then I'll make notes on it, or maybe I'll already have notes, hopefully, and then I'll start to put together a couple drills that would make sense for a warm-up, and I'll ask myself basically, what's the most important move to know from half guard? If I only had one move to show you guys from half guard, what would I show and why? Well, I would show the cross shoulder post with the knee shield, because if you can't keep the guy's weight away from you in half guard, there's no basic point in learning any sweeps or attacks, because you're just going to be basically get mauled the entire time, right? Then what's the second move I would show from half guard? Well, I would show get the underhook and start to come up and take the back. If you can combine that with the cross shoulder post and the knee shield, then you can actually have a little bit of a half guard game going. So then what's the third move I would add if I had 3 chances to show you guys 3 half guard moves? That's kind of how I try to build my like lesson plan or like curriculum. I think that's been really effective for me lately, and I'm going to keep that going forward. Final question, and thanks to everyone who submitted questions. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It helps just draw attention to the channel, and will make for better videos in the future. What do you do for recovery? Well, I will tell you what I do, but first I'll say don't look up to me. The one who I look up to for recovery is LeBron James. You can go on podcasts and just search LeBron James. He was on Tim Ferriss' podcast with his personal trainer, and that was really, really good. I learned a lot about what he learned for recovery on that podcast. Everyone knows who LeBron James is, and now he's old for NBA standards. I think he's 36, but he's been one of the best players in the world for, 18 years or so. So if there's going to be any advances made in how athletes recover, he's definitely going to do it. He knows how to treat his body. So if you can even steal a little bit of that, it's worth it. And things that he is big on is getting a good amount of sleep, get good consistent sleep. It's good for me because my classes, I teach the morning classes, so it encourages me to get to bed at a good time and get my rest. Having a good healthy diet, for like the majority of the time, obviously is good. Try to eat as much like fruit and vegetables as you can. I'm no expert when it comes to nutrition, but I think everyone is obviously their own experiment when it comes to nutrition. If you eat something and then feel terrible after, then don't eat that anymore. Just as simple as that. And I feel with jiu-jitsu, when people are just trying to beat you up and you eat a Big Mac before and you feel like crap, you're like, well, I'm not going to eat a Big Mac next time. I'm going to eat a granola bar, right? To me, it just makes sense, and I automatically cut that out when I feel bad and associate that with food. Other things would be you have to do some type of stretching or yoga, something where, especially because the people that like jiu-jitsu tend to train it a lot, and you just put so much wear and tear on your body, especially if you're training with good people or people that are at your skill level, that you have to do something to kind of counteract all that stress. So putting a good amount of time in for stretching, it's something that I've focused more on as I got older. I'll be 31 in March, but I got 14 years of training in, and that's a lot of wear and tear on my body. I've taken some injuries along the way, nothing too major. Knock on wood, I've never had to have a surgery or anything. But honestly, I think just by getting good sleep, regular night sleep, 7-8 hours a night when possible, the majority of the time, having a fairly good diet and stretching when I can, along with warming up, I think has honestly carried me through all of my years of training so far. And I've always liked to train more than anybody I know. Like, I prefer to do 2 days if I can, not rolling crazy all out both sessions. But if, say, I can get in a morning class, get 3 or 4 rolls in, and then come back in the evening and do the same thing, to me, that's not too much for me to put on my body. But that's something you really have to baby yourself with too. If you're not used to training 7 days a week, you can't just go from 0 days a week to 7 days a week. You have to start with twice a week, then next do 3 times a week, then after that maybe do 4 times a week. At some point it might be a little bit too much and you might have to scale it back a bit. But if you slowly add on, you'll be able to handle more and more. And that's just what I did for my jiu-jitsu training. And another person that I stole from early on in my jiu-jitsu career was Kobe Bryant. He had a really crazy work ethic and just one of those guys you'd read stories about that, man, this guy would get up early, and he'd get up early just so he could get an extra practice in the morning. Then he'd go back in the afternoon and go back in the evening. And if you put that on a calendar, the amount of practices that he's getting in is 3 times the amount as the other guys in the NBA. So no wonder he's doing way better than everybody else. So when you hear stories like that, to me, it left a mark on me, and I'm like, okay, I need to do that, especially where I don't have the opportunity like some of these guys in the world who are able to train with Danaher and train with Gordon Ryan and can learn kind of right from the source. I already feel like I'm kind of a step behind where I have to kind of gather this knowledge on my own. I'm very thankful that it's out there, but I kind of have to go and search for it. And, so I already kind of feel like I'm a step behind, so I feel like I kind of have to go the extra mile and do these types of things. So yeah, sleep good, stretch, eat healthy. I've only ever been to see an actual nutritionist once, but she did give me some good advice in that after like a hard practice or training session, you should try to get something into you as quick as possible. So often, like, I will usually have like an apple or a banana that I'll eat like usually right after training, like on my way home. And honestly, I've noticed a difference in how I feel if I don't do that. If I don't eat anything at all for a couple hours, I'll feel kind of crappy compared to if I eat a banana and an apple and maybe I get a Gatorade and some water into me. It honestly does make a big difference. Remember, you're your own guinea pig. Remember how you felt last time compared to how you feel this time, and just make little changes. Thanks again for watching. Keep training smart, and see you in the next video.